All right. Welcome, everyone, and good morning. This is Kelly Renz. I'm the President and CEO of the Novo Group. I will be kicking off our webinar today about employer value proposition and understanding, do our candidates know your story? Ultimately, this is the first in a webinar series of topics on something that is very near and dear to all of our human capital hearts, which is the fact that today's candidates have much higher expectations of us as employers. And in order to connect with them, to motivate them to know us, and to engage with us, we have to start looking at doing things a little bit differently. And today we're going to give you lots of good, real-world examples of what employers are doing to differentiate themselves and compete in this hyper-competitive marketplace for talent. So we'll go ahead and get started. Again, as I mentioned, I'm the President and CEO of the Novo Group, and this topic is something that is the #1 subject matter that we're working on with our clients out in the marketplace, and that is, in this talent shortage, how do we attract talent? How do we differentiate ourselves as employers in ways that are more meaningful to the candidate population? The Novo Group, just briefly, is a human capital and recruitment consulting firm working with organizations of all different sizes and industries, helping to identify and pipeline strong talent, recruit talent, whether it's one hire per year or thousands. We also provide strategic talent effectiveness solutions to help equip human capital departments in strategic projects, things that can be arranged from succession planning and competency development, and then working with partners like Versant, who you'll be hearing from today, on an important thing such as employer value proposition and the workplace branding. So we'll go ahead and get right into our topic and have a little fun with this. So we all know that talent is important. You wouldn't be participating in this webinar if you didn't feel that way and if it wasn't a top priority for your organization. But what do some of the top executives out in the marketplace say about talent? And it's one thing to say something. I like this one, Tony Shea from Zappos. To make customers happy, we have to make sure our employees are happy first. But to put that into action, into a meaningful framework and deliberate program in our talent solutions, is the hard part of the process. So of course we have to make our employees happy. We want them engaged. We want them motivated. But how do we do that? And I love looking at the Howard Schultz of Starbucks. We will never, and I mean never, turn our backs on our employees. Powerful statements, differentiators for these as employer brands and workplace brands. And we want to talk a little bit about how you can implement some of these things in your organization. I'd encourage you to reflect as we go on to the next slide about what your CEOs would say about talent in your organization. In some situations, you may have a very large sell job to do on workplace branding, but some of you may have already embarked on this. So regardless of where you are in your journey, I think you'll find some real value in the different stories we share about organizations who are doing the same things that you are and have faced some of the same challenges we all are in this talent shortage. Oftentimes we find that the case for workplace branding really needs to be made from a human capital perspective. And one of the powerful subject matters that we all have been hearing for years is about the looming talent cliff, and arguably we're right smack dab in the middle of it. If you take a look at where we are on this continuum, there's a few really important things to consider. Number one, every single day, 10,000 baby boomers turn 65. And post-recession recovery, arguable whether we've ever fully recovered or not, but 401ks certainly have, the rate of retirement is increasing and picking up. And you can look at that coupled with lower populations of new entrants into the marketplace for employment. Take a look at this bar chart. It's really interesting when you see where we sit here in 2017. It ain't over yet. We haven't hit the worst of times yet, and we will never get back to the pre-2010 levels. And so we as organizations have a lot of work to do, and we need to be setting the stage for the tougher times ahead in how we will attract and differentiate ourselves. So as we know that this deficit will get a little tougher before it gets better, let's look at some of the other challenges that are facing businesses. So in a set of interviews with different executives conducted by both Career Builder and Hunt Scanlon, when asked about what the impact of the talent shortage is on their business, I think these are some staggering statistics. So for example, here, 2 in 3 employers, 67%, are concerned about the growing skills gap. That's not even just available talent, it's that when you find the talent, do they have the skills? This is an education and capability question. And more than half say they've seen a negative impact on their businesses as a result to job vacancies. I was just having a conversation with one of our large clients this week, and their vacancy rate of job openings have gone from at one point a low of 3% to 14%. That means at any given time in their population, 14% of positions are vacant. That has a direct and serious impact on the productivity and results of their business. Others have experienced higher employee turnover. So what does vacancy breed in an organization? It breeds frustration, overworked, overtime, and generally lower engagement in organizations for a population. Lower morale. 39% indicated that the morale of the organization as a result of the shortage of talent has a direct impact on how people feel about the engagement in their business. And lower quality work, whether that's through fatigue, through the vacancies, through being rushed to accomplish more work with less, 37% would say that they've experienced lower quality work out of their workforce. This one is the one that I know hits hardest, and it's the inability to grow. Imagine as a leader of a business having done all of the things right. You have a great product, a solution, you've got the right market, you've got a channel, you've got a sales process, but at the end of the day, the limiting factor of your growth is that you cannot fill the talent needs to deliver. And in some cases, direct revenue loss. I'm not sure about you, but when I look at these as a CEO myself, these are staggering statistics about the business case to focus on talent. But what are candidates saying? What is it that the candidates are looking for on the flip side of this? You know, are you hanging out where your candidates are, and are you speaking their language? 93% of those currently employed would leave their current organization simply because of a better reputation. 93% would want to advance to a more reputable organization. Or how about 76% of people wouldn't accept a position greatly due to the reputation of a business? You know, what is your story in the marketplace? How are you perceived? Do you know? Do you know what your candidates and employees are saying about you? And then lastly, 58% will leave an organization that does not have an established employer value proposition, because through different mediums, they create their own employer value proposition if you don't help them form that. You know, net of this is if you don't know what makes your organization different to talent, you will look and sound a lot like everyone else. So just from a vernacular and clarification perspective, and I'll be turning this over to Will in just a moment, workplace brand is often a confusing a nomenclature and can be confused with employer value proposition. And today we'll spend some time really helping you distinguish the difference so that you can articulate that in your business case separately. One of the things I like to do is draw a pretty simple analogy, and we'll drive this a lot deeper for you in a moment. Think about the workplace brand, which is really the external recognition of your organization, both to potential and current employees. I like to think about the fact that we all recognize a brand such as the Nike swoosh. When we see the Nike swoosh, we know that that's actually a product brand. But within it, we associate, and whether it's accurate or not, a culture of athleticism, health, employee focus. But employer value proposition takes that another step further and really can focus on either an organization as a whole and culture, or can be segmented into the individual needs of job families or certain types of roles. For example, if you look at what Zappos has done, for those of you that are shoe lovers like me, if you look at Zappos, look at how they've differentiated themselves as an employer with their with their core values. I love some of these, and I'll read a couple. The one is deliver wow through service and do more with less. They are a very frugal organization, but they have a very fun environment, so much that their core value of create fun and a little weirdness. I had the pleasure of having them as a client at one point in my career, and I will say they deliver on fun and weirdness in their culture. And they are very proud of the distinction of that. So they have publicized it. They are everywhere in social media. They share and tell their story and say, this is our culture. If you want a part of that, this is what you'll get. If this isn't for you, that's okay too. So we will help you really understand what is different, what makes you unique, and probably above all, maybe a lasting thought as I turn this over to Will, is if you do not currently have or think you have a workplace brand, you actually do. It just might be by accident and not the one that you designed or the one you want to nurture for your talent growth. Will, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Good morning, and thank you. So I'm Will Ruch, and my company is Versant, and just a real quick piece on how I got into this business. About 20 years ago, a client, a large insurance company that was spending some money on the marketing side, said, well, we don't have any budget because we don't have any more people. And that was really an attention getter for me, so I said, well, how about giving me a chance to help you recruit some people? And at that time, it was Gen X folks off of campuses, and so that opened this talent practice, which is a passion and specialty of ours at Versant, and I'm going to share with you what I've learned over the last 20 years from some wonderful clients. And today, more than ever, we know that good candidates are shoppers. They're in a buyer's market, and so I'm going to share with you 5 action steps that ultimately are going to really help you, whether you're with a large company or small, regardless of industry, regardless of budget. You're going to see some proven practices that work, and they're really simple. And I can tell you that there is this perception that this is only work for large companies with big budgets. That's a false assumption. So we will share with you kinds of things that I think will be very helpful. Kelly's point about building the business case internally is probably something I hear most often. Someone that asked me about attending this WebEx just the other day said, you know, I just can't seem to get buy-in internally. And so we will address that because it is a new practice for many organizations. The good news is there's so many indicators today that the C-suite is beginning to be fearful of with respect to this talent clip that I think will be very important. One thing as we go through, there is a common focal point that all of the practices, the do's and the don'ts, and the information that I will share with you, they all have one thing in common, and that is they truly want to be a destination workplace. These folks have learned many tactics that I think you can put in place. I do think they're all people that ultimately have a little creative side to them. They break some rules. They make it a team event. This is not something that's done alone. They keep it simple, and they keep on pushing. And so ultimately, that's what you will see. To refer back to the screen, I would only change one thing that Kelly talked about. I'd scratch out approaching, because the deficit of workers, it's very real. Last evening, we all read about in Wisconsin, and many of you are from Wisconsin, the news of Foxconn coming here. I mean, it's a national story because it's jobs, jobs, jobs. And a few other leading indicators beyond this one that I think might be helpful as you build your case. In May, U.S. employers reported 6 million unfilled job openings. That's the most in 16 years. We all know that the size of this contingent workforce, this freelance workforce, has nearly doubled in 20 years. Of course, today's unemployment rate is a big indicator that you might want to use. And also check out your state's job website, and you will see how many jobs remain open in your region or industry. I just got done speaking to all of the accountants, and I mean, you talk about an industry that's looking at severe shortage. It's really an urgent issue. Someone said to me the labor market is getting tighter than a rusted lug nut. That came from a manufacturer, and I think, again, this screen helps point that out. So what are candidate impressions? And as you look at this screen, interviews, online research, very important, but look at this number. 80% of people would take one job over another based on the personal relationships formed during the interview process. This is really important data as you begin to think about developing your workplace brand and your employee value proposition. It's your story, and you can see how evenly divided the impact is whether it's interview, online, or initial contract. It is really about a personal experience, and I think that's what we're going to share today that works. Interesting, too, a CHRO recently told me that the hiring process is one of the few times that the candidate is actually in a one-on-one environment. So think about how important that is when you look at that 80% number, because it's really very, very important. What we're going to learn today, talk a little bit more about making this building and building your case, capturing what's distinctive and valued in your organization, finding the right storytellers. This is really the fun part and really has such energy and excitement to it, using a mix of channels, and then also making sure that we're measuring success along the way. Every one of us today have to do a better job with that, and we'll show you. And we have a live participant from someone that really has a great deal of experience in that as well. I'm going to share with you a number of client contributors, so I love bringing forward their stories because they are doing it. And again, they are from a mix of companies. None of these folks have giant budgets. None of these folks have excess time. These folks recognize that the workplace brand is about 3 R's today: recruiting, retaining, and repelling. And that repelling piece is important too, because not all of our workplaces are meant for everybody. So they also understand this fact, that the national mood today on jobs is edgy, even fearful. These practitioners are sensitive to that reality, and they look for creative solutions. They are catalysts in what I think is really a rapid changing environment for them, but they are realists, and they're looking at the future talent sourcing in new and exciting ways. They are not afraid to push for change, and you're going to hear again from them. I want to start with my co-author, who is a former CHRO of Xerox, and she and I really hit it off. Can you imagine 80,000 employees and the kinds of things that Xerox went through? And I love what she says. You just don't get a second chance to make a first impression. She says everything filters back to this brand and the very first impression, and it's a virtuous cycle. The question is, which comes first? The effectiveness of the interviewing and your hiring process, or your workplace story and how it is being told, not just by you, but by others today in certain areas, and certainly with social media. What I think Pat and I also discovered in our research in our book is that this perception really matters. When you lead change like this inside an organization, and when you take the candidate experience as such an important entry point into your organization, it sparks an energy inside the company that can be wonderful, and can be wonderful for your leadership as well. And you'll hear me talk about how marketing people are getting into this. Elena French is the Vice President of Internal Comm at Lincoln Financial. That's a company that's based in in Philadelphia, Fortune 500 company in the financial service business with over 9,000 employees. And when you see what she's talking about here with millennials, they've identified that these 80 million millennials are absolutely a hot button to get everybody's attention to look at this business differently. And it is bringing in marketing and communications experts like Elena to help be part of the solution. And I asked her again for a little more information. I'd like to just read something here. She says, we are focused on understanding millennials both as employees and certainly as customers, and adjusting our outreach, our communications, and overall our value prop to ensure we are successfully attracting, engaging, and developing this important group within our workforce. Nowhere is this more evident than in the world of recruiting, where it's just no longer a simple LinkedIn outreach, not a career fair booth or career site posting. It's just not sufficient anymore to gain the interest. Our brand, she says, is more important than ever, and having third-party advocates who are strong and vocal supporters as a result of their positive experiences with Lincoln has never been more critical. And she works very closely with the CHRO and all of the human resource team, because it has to be a team event. And I think it's really a textbook example of how this should be done. And here's one of the reasons why. Today we know that candidates are searching over 17 resources to learn about your organization and your story. So it's marketing 101 here, and like Elena talked about, and the team at Lincoln, this data point really supports the fact that you've got to put on a marketing cap, and you've got to think of the candidate as a customer. Interesting, I was reading a quote from Jay Leno when asked in the New York Times about what it's like to be off the Tonight Show, And he says, you know, social media, the world has changed. He says, we live in a time now where what you say is so much worse than what you do. And I thought that was really interesting, which is probably why he says everybody's going to social media to find out the real deal. And then just 2 days ago, the Democratic Party just decided that their new theme moving forward is the real deal. So there's a lot here that we have that is clearly reflecting the mood of America, the mood of employees, the mood of how we need to connect with what is the real deal inside my company, because people are going to so many different resources to find out. Now, in Versant's work, we get in touch with a lot of folks, so I want to share with you some survey data this morning as well. This is a question to over 400 senior executives. And again, this won't surprise you, but how difficult is it to hire talent? Look at the numbers here. 91% are saying it's really somewhat or very difficult. So there's a big movement to get this right. And there's a big movement to bring in the entire organization to help do that. One CFO, interesting, said to me at the end of a workshop I did, well, there's no problem here because the robots are coming. Again, this guy was probably part of the very small percentage that responded it's not difficult, and we all know that robots aren't going to be the solution to all. Question to the same group again, well, how well known is your company to talent? And take a look at these numbers here. Only 29% of these that we surveyed last year are saying it's well known. So 71% are studying this kind of work just like you are. And again, whether large or small, what's really critical here is there's a big gap, and the C-suite is beginning to get it, regardless of your company size. There are a number of people on this WebEx this morning that do not come from HR because they're leading some of this charge inside their companies because they must focus to new ways to connect and tell their employment story. This is a great question, by the way, to ask your leadership team and find out where you stand. You'll hear me talk about creativity, and you know, I will tell you, there are a lot of people in HR, accounting, operations that don't think they're creative. And I simply don't see that. Every one of us has creative skills, and I encourage you to look at your creative side, your right brain side, because this work really requires that. And it's the fun part of it. It's the emotional part of what exists in the workplace. So it may not be what you think your core strengths are, but I encourage you to discover it, to learn a little bit more about it. You'll see some TED Talks that I'm going to recommend that will definitely inspire you. One of the reasons that I love the human capital space is it's so tied to really now what's happening in the marketing space. And we all know what good marketing is. We just need to apply that kind of thinking to the employment experience, to the candidate experience, because again, candidates are shoppers. They are customers. And today, if you don't have great people in your organization, you're going to have a really hard time telling your brand story. Steve Becker is the CHRO of Signet Jewelers. You'll recognize the companies as Kay, Zales, Jared, and others around the country. 30,000 employees, $7 billion in sales, global, out of Akron, Ohio. And he really inspires creativity and an energy in the way that they have to look at creative ways to succeed. What is the story behind that brand? He goes on to say, and I quote, "We think creatively and engage a diverse team in this brand work. We think of candidates as customers. We want the application and the screening process to leave a positive, lasting impression that makes them feel good about themselves and us. We align all we do with our customer-facing brands." And I think what's important here, too, it's very important in this work that we do bring in the brand marketing folks because we want to follow those guidelines. We do not want to go out of that area because, again, there's been a great deal of attention and money usually put into the brand side. And here's what some of that work looks like at Lincoln, at Signet. And there's a very large use of video in the work that we do and what we'd like to show today. Unfortunately, WebExes don't do video well, so we'd be happy to provide a link for you if you would like and send you the actual video work. But again, what you can see here is real people, creativity in the way that we're talking about the focus to the candidate experience, and we're making sure that in all cases there is an aspirational but also a realistic tone to the work. So step one is making this business case and bringing that candidate story forward. It is about developing content to also optimize the recruiters and the work that they're doing, and that's very important in terms of content creation. This will decrease time to fill key positions, and it really should tie into your external brand. And I wanted to bring the CEO's voice into this. Frank leads the world's largest producer of automotive locks and keys, 4,000 employees in the U.S. and Mexico, based here in Milwaukee. They're always awarded the best place to work. And look at what Frank talks about in terms of, yes, it's going to take some money, and yes, it's going to take some time. But it's important that we celebrate the victories, both individual and corporate. And he also talks about creativity, to make sure that we make time to have some fun and put a smile on people's faces. It's very important, he says, and he goes on to give this quote, it's too easy for a lot of HR people to focus on the problems and the challenges and put those in front of the CEO. And that is not the thing that Frank's recommending. He's saying present the positives. And CEOs of the future are going to have to do this. There's a great HBR publication that came out in May and June of this year. It's titled What Great CEOs Do Differently. Frank is one of those folks. I encourage you to read that publication. It's what all your C-suite people are reading. And it talks about creativity and innovation, and it talks about, obviously, what people need to do on a talent side. It really is a great example. The articles also, as I mentioned, in terms of resources, a great one from Bloomberg in June on jobs, and many of the other publications, how left-brain solutions are being outsourced today, and right-brain creative thinking isn't. These are things that we must bring to the human capital talent sourcing practice. And this isn't a feeling, it's not a philosophy, this is a fact. And I encourage you to, again, look at companies like Frank's and others that are being written at and see how much right-brain creative thinking is being applied to what we're all practicing today. And I think that great HR leadership and great companies and the ideas that they have putting forward are great. I got a call yesterday from a CEO of a manufacturing company, 600 employees, is having me do a 2-hour workshop with his 15 executives because in 2019 they're going to be a destination workplace, and he is going to get them actively involved. And he's devoting 2 hours of an 8-hour workshop off-site to do this. He sees what has to happen, and he wants to engage his entire leadership. The other piece that's great today, too, is CEOs are beginning to really see how employees and retirees are creating communities. Retirees from those organizations do not want to be totally connected. They're terrific, as you know, terrific ways to build referrals. And also, I think the use of video. Make sure that you're studying that. I was just sharing before the workshop started, my youngest, a 22-year-old, cannot stop sending me videos and telling me how creative all of her fellow students are in the water science practice that she's in at the university. And so video creation, storytelling is certainly something that we all know how to do, and we all have the ability to apply that to this practice. Step 2. So how do we capture what's distinctive and valued in your organization? And that's critical because great marketing is about distinction. So the story of why employees enjoy and stay at your organization is the story. And that translates as to why candidates should join. Now we ask this question again to the same group of people. Well, is your recruiting message capturing your workplace experience? Only 16% of the employers responded, yes, that's it. So this is, again, a very big opportunity for you. And you might want to ask this question again to your own leadership team and see how they respond, because this could, again, trigger some change. This is at the heart of what we are all about at Versant and in the talent practice, and it's something that if you have not seen, this is a great takeaway. If nothing more, put this up on your wall and really focus to the why, not the how and not the what, because this is at the heart of the workplace brand. It's the core to everyone's unique story, and it's what candidates are looking to discover about you, your organization, the sense of community, the sense of workplace you have. And you really need to just ask 2 key questions. One is, why did you come? And 2, why do you stay? And that why you stay question to those with tenure is the question. Now you have to make sure that the answers are really accurate and real. And so I do think what we see is that to get to that accuracy, participants need to make sure that how they answer it and how they respond is candid is kept in a way that will not come back to hurt them. We do suggest third party at doing this, and we make sure that there's anonymity with respect to participants, because this is a really key piece to it. If you get this part wrong and the answers are given by fearful employees, stop. This will not work. So this is the first step, and this is a critical step. It will not be genuine, and your workplace brand will be flawed if you don't have an accurate representation of why people come to stay. And quite honestly, the how of what they do their work and what they do their work and do is not the hard part. That's really not the explanation. So we think this is something that can be very enjoyable, but at times it can also be a little painful. The reality, the truthfulness that's going to come from this step is very important. Now, I don't want to minimize what the how and the what, because that's important too, of course, and compensation and benefits need to be competitive. That's a given. But I would ask you to ask the question, is your why of work clear and consistent? And if not, that's a great place to start. And this is where a client of ours started. Susan Quackenbush is the CHRO of Vonage, and for those of you that may know Vonage, that at one time was really built their whole business on landlines, so you can imagine the transformation they're going through. And Sue needed to transform this company, and so she started by asking the why of work and what's important to you, and she went across literally the globe with that. She understands the importance also of multiple methodologies and the third party to make sure that we get this feedback right. So she uses methodologies like phone and e-survey, feedback sessions. Personally conducted a number of executive one-on-one phone interviews. They were only to be 15 minutes, but they really went on to 30 and 45 because everybody really wants to get this right in a company that is transforming. And Vonage has to transform. And I think it's wonderful that the leadership in that organization and that Sue as a leader, as a CHRO, puts on this marketing cap and brings everyone together to really get to the right story. And I'm going to share with permission some of her work. And so again, with permission, this is how we then summarize in a word cloud what we learn. And this is a great way to bring people forward. It's a great way to put this into your facility brand and to share across the organization. Because here's what came back. And the larger words in a word cloud, of course, represent what we heard more of. And the smaller words are what we heard less of. But ultimately, this becomes the platform for us to be able to really drive a story, a theme, a tagline, and content, and videos, because this is what's going on there. And I'll show you the tagline that then was created. And again, there's an emotional side to this and a rational side to this. And on the emotional side, on Be What's Next right now, we're talking about people. We're talking about relationships. We're talking about learning and sparking something. We're talking about something that's exciting and dynamic. On the rational side, Be What's Next right now talks about vision, opportunity, growth, innovation, change, transformation, and yes, challenging work and making an impact. And this is the way the companies today, like Vonage, are beginning to truly tell the story and then wrap content around it so that candidates and employees and even the re-recruiting efforts that need to go on in times of transformation can be powerful. I thought I mentioned earlier on also about two wonderful TED Talks that I think out of 30 minutes of your life could be very powerful for your team, for your leaders, if you've not seen these. The first on the left is a gentleman by the name of Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K. The TED Talk has over 33 million views. It's titled How Great Leaders Inspire Action. And if you have not seen this, I promise you it will help you with this work and it will help you think in a creative way. On the right-hand side, Daniel Pink, written many books. He talks about the puzzle of motivation. He has over 18 million views. And I suggest these because I think this is a way to begin to think differently inside the organization. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of HR people, a lot of HR departments and teams need to have a little reputation repair. They need to get a little fresh energy inside. They need to look at this talent environment very differently. I'll promise you that these two pieces will change your thinking and will give you motivation and energy to do things in a different way. With step 3, we talk about finding the right storytellers to connect with candidates. And as I say, this is really a lot of fun when you get to this step, because ultimately winning companies identify employees that they want more of. That's all you have to do. It's identify those employees you want more of. And then watch what happens with the content that will be created around them. Now, this work goes beyond recruitment advertising. This is content marketing. And content marketing is about exploring new ways to present your story with long-term brand building. There's no question that video is key and is so important, because when people see things, they feel things, and when they feel things, they change, and that's the power of video. But this approach is core, absolutely core to a great workplace brand, and I suggest you capture short stories from several employees. I'd say at least start with 5, and certainly include your CEO. If you've got a resistant CEO, and I've certainly run into many of those, you got to teach them. You got to help them, because their voice is critical. Now, make sure that the production isn't a big lights, camera, action, and it is not a production that should be expensive. It needs to be affordable, but it needs to be professional. I suggest using big, bold graphics. We call them flashcards, because many people are looking at these videos while they're on another job that they want out of. So audio is not used frequently, but that's the fact. And in all the research we see, it's amazing how much is going on today. Yesterday on NPR, I heard that 70% of American workers are unhappy with their jobs. I'm not sure I agree with that, but that's the number they had. So you want to keep video, you want to keep the stories certainly less to a minute. We do not believe that most folks should talk to camera. We think they should be slightly off camera. So there are many techniques that you'll see. And these are the real faces and voices of people. These are their stories. And I will tell you, the gentleman that's focused on the left there, Dave Rasich, who's the managing partner of an architectural firm, 80 employees. He will tell you that this work has absolutely changed the entire ballgame for them in hiring architects and project managers. So again, not everybody has to have 2,000 employees and a large budget, but they have to have a commitment from the top. And then let them tell their stories. They've got to tell us why I should work for your organization. Let your employees' stories really capture what they tell friends, what they tell their family, and why they like working at your organization. Now, their story must answer what attracts and retains and engages the talent you want more of, talent like them. And it's got to be real. This content in this digital world that we live in today is really becoming quite the vehicle for getting that storytelling out. So tagging and categorizing content to facilitate indexing and raising its search engine ranking, I think, is outlined really very easily in a book called Employer Branding for Dummies, written by 2 folks out of the UK, and the founder of that organization, Simon Sinek, is in my book, who kind of invented employer branding. But Employer Branding for Dummies gives you some really great, easy ways to apply some of the indexing and search engine ranking as well. Also, as you look at your workplace and you look at the story, this is a wonderful way to start telling the reality of the workplace. So we always encourage people in these stories. You do have to deal with travel, long hours, occasional weekend work. This is the place to do it. Again, workplace brand, recruit, retain, repel. You don't want people to come into your organization who you forgot to identify that they're going to be in airports. So you've got to make sure that you're also telling the real deal here. And I think you will find it is accepted and it is appreciated in the way that you package that story. A few more key points on storytelling. Make the employees feel comfortable. Everybody's a little bit nervous about this, but you've got to do it in a relaxing, fun way. That's why, again, you can't have tons of cameras and lights and audio. It'll scare the heck out of them. Capture what's unique. Add visuals. This isn't just about talking heads, because that's boring. So bring in the visuals. We call it B-roll, background footage. Video. Shoot and edit with an experienced professional. We'll make sure that you understand that this isn't just about an iPhone with somebody putting it in someone's face. I think you really have to be careful with that, but on the other hand, this should not be expensive. And take a look at these numbers. 300 hours of videos are uploaded to YouTube every minute, and we just see so much impact with people that are using these pieces to help, again, tell their story. Step 4, probably obvious. It's a mix of channels today to reach candidates and increase profile. Big platforms are not the only ones suitable for promoting your story to candidates. There are niche platforms that are emerging, and you want to identify your target audience and what is their preferred platform, and let those drive your strategy. And again, getting help from marketing people or people that have some knowledge in this space can be very helpful to you. This is a pretty fascinating chart as well, and it talks about the importance of getting your people to participate. So keep in mind that 92% of most employees' followers are new to that employer brand. And when you look at the 24% and the 8 times, the more that your employees can amplify and share content, the better you're going to get your story forward. So creating buzz, creating excitement, creating energy inside a company, this is a way to do it. And young folks, particularly today, are very excited to be part of it as long as the story is accurate and represents what the real deal is. I said I would share in the few remaining minutes some do's and don'ts. So these are some do's, and while the screen may be a bit boring, I can tell you that this works. So you will, in fact, be able to truly reduce and change a number of things in your organization, as outlined here, if you put these practices to work. And we know what the costs of recruiting replacements are like. We know what happens when someone has a bad onboarding experience. And we know what happens when, in fact, the wrong talent comes into your organization. This is all a way to make sure that that story is accurate. And on the onboarding side, I want to just share with you something from a client that's at the medical college, about 1,000 graduate students and a faculty of over 1,500. And she really understands, again, look at her title. She's marketing in a college. And she understands that we need to make the candidate experience, once they're hired, to come on board. And she has a creative title of boot camp. So she uses boot camps for that first roughly 6 weeks or 6 months to acclimate the new people into her teams, which is extensive, to learn about the organization, to learn about the politics of an organization, and to really get a sense of place. And I love the way that she makes it fun, because a boot camp implies that this is really going to be a good experience. And of course, that then gets communicated to so many others, because the first 2 or 3 years of anyone's first experience in a job, everybody is asking them, what's it like? What's it like to work there? So again, the onboarding experience is really important. Also, one more comment on the don'ts. Don't be fake, which may be obvious, but be careful not to be so aspirational that you're exaggerating. Don't be braggy, and certainly make sure that you have to be responsive, so that you have to deal with the reality inside the organization and understand how important it is that in this storytelling that you are giving an accurate representation of what it's like to work there. And lastly, I wanted to bring in a partner of mine and someone that I think really has some expertise around measuring, because we all know how every C-suite and all of us want to make sure that we're measuring success and we're keeping the candidate story fresh, and that we are consistently really doing very frequent and making sure that what we learn about our candidates, the onboarding, the workplace is critical. And we all hear so much about engagement today that I thought I would introduce Troy Hatlevitt, who is co-founder of a wonderful tool called Engage. And Troy is going to join us and just share a little bit about what he's learned and a little bit about his practice and his experience. Then I'll come back and summarize and hand it off to Kelly. Troy?
Great. Thanks a lot, Will. Everyone, great to be with you today. I'm Troy Hatlevitt. I'm the CEO of Engage. I've spent 25 years in the human capital and technology industry, and Engage is a employee pulse and feedback platform. As I was preparing for the call today with Will, I thought of an old piece of advice I've heard from HR folks, which is that great companies re-recruit their people all the time. And I think that's better advice than a lot of people realize. In addition to providing engagement software, we also have a retention module in our software that has exit surveys. And I took a deep look at the data in preparation for the call, and there's some very interesting stuff that emerged. Number one, what we saw was that a lot of people in their engagement strategy focus on issues like retention, they focus on issues like recognition, morale, performance. They're trying to drive performance, and that's great. But when we looked at the data from the people who had left the company and compared the engagement data from those same people while they were at the company, we saw that there was a big difference between the two data sets. What we saw was that when people have left a company, a lot of times the issues that describe the reasons why they left the company were almost exactly the same as the issues of why candidates were coming to the company in the first place. In other words, your people who are at your company right now don't necessarily stay because of the same issues that drive performance. They stay for the same reasons that candidates join the company in the first place, right, which is all about your employer value prop. A good example of this was in recognition. What we saw in the recognition data was that people, while they were at the company, recognition was really important to them, and it was closely aligned on a driver of performance. But once they had decided to leave the company, recognition was a much lower factor in why they had left the company. Much more important were issues like growth, like strategy, all the same issues that the candidates were looking at when they were coming into the company. And the same issue was like with growth and so on. That wasn't as high on the driver of performance, but it was huge in terms of why people stayed, right? So what we took away from all this was just one very simple, as you're thinking about your business case for your employer value proposition, don't forget about retention of your current people as one of the core reasons why you should do it. It absolutely, if you can focus on the employer value proposition and have that reflected in your current workplace, it will absolutely improve and boost the retention of current people in addition to your ability to get candidates excited about your company as well. I think that's I just wanted to make one key point about that, and I'll hand it back to Will.
Thanks, Troy. And then lastly, before I hand it back to Kelly here, I like to ask this question of candidates: why are you and other employees willing to spend free time recruiting on behalf of your company? And when someone comes into an organization after they've gone through the process, this is a great question to ask. Again, because most people within the first 6 months to a year really have some very interesting answers to these questions if they're willing to continue to help to recruit. And frequently, when you ask someone with a little more tenure, the response is universal to me. And they most look at me like, what a stupid question. And then they answer, because this is an awesome place to work. And that is certainly what we're all aspiring to be. And we all know that every one of us have some of those employees, and they all have options. Hopefully you have lots of them, but they are your evangelists. And I'm hoping that today's learning has resonated and given you some action steps to build your workplace brand, your employee value prop, to the next level. You'll need to invest a little time to reflect on what we shared in this fast 30 minutes and figure out which elements are right for you. You certainly have my email, my contact information, and Troy's if you have any other questions here at the end of this. And I really appreciate your time and inviting me, Kelly, to share our learning.
Glad to have you. Absolutely. Well, before we wrap up, just a few parting thoughts of practical application of what you've heard today. And I can speak as a CEO and a human capital professional that has gone through a workforce branding, workplace branding exercise. One of the things that we'll talk about is this whole why, getting to the core of why you are different. Why do people engage? Why do people work for you and work with your organization? Going back to the Novo Group's purpose that we created, when I came on board, we asked our employees for feedback on our culture. And ultimately, it helped us evolve what we call our noble purpose, our reason for existing. And it's the connection that they felt to the business. Our purpose is people are an organization's #1 competitive advantage. Novo lives out its passion of positively impacting our communities by enhancing the careers of the people in them. Novo finds, recruits, and transforms talent to empower both candidates and clients to win. But that whole Novo lives out its passion statement comes 100% from the voice of our employees and asking them what's different. And that has created a connection to our own recruitment efforts as we add talent. So firsthand value, I can speak to what that does to us as an organization to enable us to attract and brand ourselves. You can do the same, and it doesn't have to be an enormous time commitment. Start small, grow from there. You can start this practice in stages. And the things that it will do once you have your plan is you will have a distinctive workforce and workplace brand. It will be truly a view of your reputation, and will be beyond your brand recognition, but one that people see and think of you as an employer. The other is that companies who have both the workforce branding and EVP outperform. There's a greater connection, and a greater connection to employees creates happier employees, and happier employees create happier clients and growth. And today's top talent, those A players, I have yet to have a hiring manager say, hire me a C player. The A players are attractive to reasons beyond just salary and traditional. It's the why of the work that matters. This is especially true for millennials. And that lastly, the most compelling stories, those storytellers that can speak on your behalf, really outline what's unique about your organization. You need to stand out from the rest. The other thing that strikes me is to think about the fact that candidates are your customers. Shouldn't your organization put more into marketing to candidates as we do to our customers? So with that said, a couple of logistics. In the flyout menu on the right hand of your screen, you will see that we have handouts. The handouts, there are 4 of them that you can grab as takeaways. They're included, including the PowerPoint for notes and reference, as well as some data and information about our organization, the Novo story, the Versant story, and some details about the services provided. There's also a question section on the flyout menu that we're going to open up at this point to see if you have any questions you would like us to respond to. And then, of course, lastly, afterwards, we recognize feedback is critical, so you will get a very short 5-question survey that pops up. Please help us increase and improve our webinars with your feedback, and we want to understand what's valuable to you so we can bring more of that to you. So let's go down to the questions and see what we can. Oh, HBR. The question is, can you tell everybody what HBR stands for?
Yes, I'm sorry. That's Harvard Business Review, and it comes out 6 times a year, and I was referring to the Harvard Business Review publication of May, June of this year.
Great. There's also a request to confirm or reconfirm the name of the book, the CEO book that was referred to earlier in the presentation.
Power Partners. And you'll see it in that screen on the left, and you can go to Amazon and just type in Power Partners. And it's really about the relationship between HR and marketing.
Very good. And there it is right here on the bottom of the page.
Yep.
I know you can find it on Amazon.
Yep.
Other questions that we can answer? I think here's one that I'll summarize. How can an HR organization really just get started with the planning process, and what is really that first logical step to really get this off the ground?
Yeah, I think if you ask 1 or 2 of the questions that we pose to those executives, that will give you some content to probably go to your leadership and say, you know, are we having a struggle getting talent in their opinion? Is our story clear? That's a great way to come into the meeting with, here's what you've told us, and I think that's a first step that works. And then ultimately to identify some of the folks that you'd like to have more of that can go out and begin to tell the story of why someone should think about your company as a place to work, as a destination. And those are easy steps to start with. And then ultimately you want to really get into what is unique about your organization, and you want to discover your why of work in a way that allows for you to put a real picture around all of what you're doing and to make this come alive, because your workplace brand needs to have the elements of any branding, which are, again, aspirational, exciting, and that you drive some interest for people to find out more, or as Troy just talked about, to keep staying there and not necessarily respond to some of the job offers that might be appealing to them.
Very good. Well, it looks like that concludes the questions that we received from our audience online. Thank you so much for your participation today. Thank you for spending an hour with us. And I wanted to tee up one additional note for you. In this series of webinars, next Thursday, same time, same place, we will be adding to the candidate engagement story through reaching deeper in your benefits program. Beyond just providing candidates a list, how can you really use that as a differentiator? It's one of the hardest differentiators that faces the HR profession, and we'll be pulling in one of our other subject matter experts from Stellaris Benefits on how, as organizations, we can leverage that in our employer value proposition, as well as in our marketing tools to candidates. So please join us next week for the second of the 4 series steps. So again, thank you so much, and have a fantastic day.
Thank you.